Now.
Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome to the meeting of the Regional Cabinet on the 4th of December at 9:37. Can I remind everyone that the meeting is being broadcast live and a recording will be available on the website following the meeting. If I can request that members have their cameras on so they're visible, but the officers keep their cameras and microphones off unless they're presenting. So item 1 is apologies. Are there any apologies we need to note?
Chair, we had apologies from Councillor Brocklesby.
Okay, and Paul Griffiths is subbing in for Liz, who we send our best wishes to. Any others we need to note? No.
No
Okay,
others, Chair.
then.
No others.
Okay, if we're happy then to move on to the minutes from the 9th of October. Anything that anyone wants to raise from those minutes? If not, are we all happy to accept them as a record? Yep, no objections. That's carried then. If I move on then to declarations of interests, anything we need to note here? Obviously, if anything comes up during the meeting, you're welcome to seek clarification with the monitoring officer. Item 4 then is the 23-24 month 6 budget monitoring report. And hand over to Chris.
Thanks, Chair, and familiar report hopefully now for Regional Cabinet. This is to provide the Regional Cabinet with the expenditure position as at month 6 or the 30th September. So in terms of summarising the issues within the report, paragraph 6 notes that as at month 6, the actual spend incurred or the half-year point is around just over 37% of the annual budget, and the projected outturn suggests that the budget will be underspent overall by just over 177,000 this year, and the position then is summarised in table 6 on the page under paragraph 6. There is narrative then to explain the key variances, and that's included in paragraph 7 to 20. Probably worth drawing out again the significant underspend is the employee-related budgets. It's also relevant, I think, for Regional Cabinet to note there's a potential for that to increase, particularly in relation to whether there will be any capitalisation of salary costs undertaken by us in terms of the closure of the 22-23 accounts and how that can be done in 23-24. So again, that'll be confirmed in future monitoring reports, but could see an increase in the level of employee-related savings. I think just paragraph 22 draws out that as in previous years, it is intended that any underspend which crystallises in the current year will be used to supplement existing general and specific earmark reserves, in particular funding for future corporate joint committee arrangements. So I guess the opportunity does present itself to use those underspends to offset those costs, and particularly around the CJC requirements. I wasn't going to add anything further, Chair. I think this is a fairly standard report, and obviously Kelly and other officers may wish to sort of comment in terms of the levels of underspend that I just referred to. But other than that, just to refer Cabinet to the recommendation at paragraph 31, which asks that the Regional Cabinet notes the position as at month 6.
That's great. Thank you, Chris. Kelly, anything you want to add there?
Yeah, Chair, if I could please, just to note the level of underspend, and quite clearly going into the next financial year, we've got some critical issues regarding production of the Regional Transport Plan and the Strategic Development Plan. So the aim is to try and level any underspend. So we've got a bit of a soft landing in relation to those two key strategic documents. It's not that we don't want to fill posts, that we can't fill them. We can. We're just trying to make future provision in what is a very challenging funding environment with a very pressing policy agenda.
Thank you. That's appreciated. And those are the conversations that we've had, haven't we, about balancing that, the need to cushion that with the here and now capacity needs. Any questions, colleagues? If not, are we happy then to move to the recommendations at paragraph 31? Can I have a proposer and a seconder, please?
Yeah, move we noted, Chair.
That's moved by Steve Thomas and seconded.
Yep, seconder.
Seconded by Andrew Morgan. Okay, are we okay to move to the vote then? So if I take Blanagwent first.
Yes, Chair.
Merthyr.
Agree, Chair.
All right. Monmouthshire.
Agree.
Thanks, Paul. Newports.
Morning, Chair. Agree.
Morning. Thanks, Jane. Caerphilly. So, sure. I'll come back there. Cardiff.
Yeah, happy to agree, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Hugh. RCT.
Yeah, happy to agree.
Thanks, Andrew. Ballard Glamorgan.
Agreed, Chair.
Thanks, Liz. Bridgend. He was having technical difficulties coming in. I'll come back there. And Torvine is agreed. So that's carried with the more than the 7 votes necessary. That's 8 votes for. So that's carried. If we're okay, then, colleagues, to move to item 5, which is the Gateway Review midterm report preparation. And is Colin coming on this first?
Yes, I'll take this one,
Thanks.
Chair. Thank you. So the purpose of this report is to provide an update to Regional Cabinet on the Cardiff Capital Region City Deal Gateway Review process, and request that we delegate authority to the CCR Director to submit the midterm review. So covering the report, just by background, the quinquennial review of the City Deal unlocks funding. That next review is due in October 2025 to be completed, which would unlock funding for the next Gateway Review period. This midterm report will be submitted fully in February 2024. And really, that's a marker of progress at this stage of the cycle. Previously, in Gateway Review 1, Cardiff Capital Region City Deal only had 1 intervention that need to be assessed. In this round, we have 18. That's because we've grouped some of the interventions together where it makes sense to do so and to lessen the effort. Interventions are categorized as progress, where they're very early in delivery, progress plus, where we might start to see some outputs, and impact. And we only have 2 impact interventions, which are the CSC Foundry and the Venture Graduate Scheme. So all the indications so far of the evidence we've gathered are good. The CCR portfolios have conducted reprofiling where necessary of interventions. We're capturing a more diverse range of indicators, and they reflect much more acutely the direction of travel that we're taking as a city deal, and indeed as in the future a corporate joint committee. This is establishing great process for monitoring and evaluation, and the team are very focused on this. It does bode well, like I say, for the corporate joint committee, both in terms of the management of multiple funds and demonstrating evidence, and also in the creation of a framework in the longer term. The process finally from here on in is that we will submit the papers in mid-December, the evidence papers. These are compiled by the agency SQW, who manage the process on behalf of the Department of Levelling Up Housing and Communities. And then we'll get review and feedback somewhere around mid-February or mid-March from the independent expert panel. So I would move to the recommendations at point 35, like I say, to provide, to note the update on the city deal progress against the Gateway Review, and to delegate authority to the CCR Director to submit the midterm review evidence papers.
Thank you. Kelly, anything to add there before we take questions or comments?
No, happy to take questions with Colin, Chair.
Okay, thanks both. Any questions, colleagues?
Happy to move the recommendations.
Okay, thanks,
Second.
Sean. So, Sean moving, and Steve seconding. Okay, if we move to the recommendation, then paragraph 35, it's recommended that we note the progress ahead against the CCR CD Gateway review process, and that we delegate authority to the Director to approve and submit the final version of the midterm evidence papers and report to the Department of Levelling Up Housing and Communities. If I take a vote on that, if I go to Blanigwent first.
Agreed, Chair.
Thanks, Steve. Merthyr.
Agree, Chair.
All right. Monmouthshire.
Agree.
Cool. Newport.
Agree.
Jane. Caerphilly.
Agree.
Thanks, Sean. Cardiff,
Agree.
you. RCT,
Agree.
Andrew Gallagher-Morgan,
Agreed.
Liz. Has you managed to get in from Bridgend?
I have, yes, Chair,
Brilliant.
but I've only just got in, so I can't vote on something. But
Okay.
I'm for the
No worries, no worries. I
Apologies.
noted the technical difficulties you're having. So and Torvine, that's agreed. So that's carried in any case. Welcome, Hugh. I'm glad you overcame the technical difficulties. Okay, so if we move then to item 6, which is the CJC transition report. Is it Kelly first on this?
Yeah, I'll just do a few lines of introduction, Chair, and then I'll hand over to Jane if that's okay. So
Thanks.
apologies, this is quite a large report, but hopefully you can see we've tried to organise that in chapters, so you get to see the necessary sequence that's going to play out now over the next few weeks. So you can see all the different interdependencies. So hopefully all of the detail is there, which Jane will take you through shortly. I think that the very good news, members, is that you'll know that for some time now we've run a dual system. We've had Cardiff Capital Region City Deal Cabinet and we've had the CJC board. Well, after today, the idea is that we start working just as the CJC board. The cabinet will be suspended, hopefully, from today until that point of lift and shift. So things should start to get much easier and much more straightforward. And the other point that I would ask you to note, there is a lot of detail inevitably in the report that you're about to hear more about. And of course, we will be preparing something that we can use as a basis for an individual report that you as 10 members can take through individual councils to talk about the transition arrangements and to make sure everybody is up to speed and understands the sequence and interdependencies which are now going to play out. So on that note, Chair, I'll hand over to Jane, come back in at the end, and very happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Chair. It is a lengthy report and I don't propose to go through it line by line, but the headlines are these. As of course members know, in 2017, the 10 councils in South East Wales came together to work collaboratively. You all entered into a joint working agreement which established this regional cabinet of the 10 council leaders. The purpose of that was to oversee delivery of the Cardiff Capital Region City Deal and other devolved funding streams, and also to manage the wider investment fund to which each of the 10 councils contribute. The Cardiff Capital Region, of course, doesn't have any separate legal personality, and for that reason it was necessary to appoint one of the constituent councils, the Cardiff Council, to act as the accountable body for the region. And Cardiff Council has principally fulfilled that role, I'm sure everybody will agree, excellently since 2017. However, since then, by legislation made in 2021, Welsh Government has established 4 new public bodies known as corporate joint committees. They're the North Wales Corporate Joint Committee, Mid Wales CJC, South West Wales and South East Wales Corporate Joint Committee. And the aim of the CJCs is to further strengthen that regional collaboration between the authorities. The CJCs have been given 3 statutory functions. Firstly, to develop regional transport policies. Secondly, to prepare a strategic development plan for the region. And thirdly, to do anything that the CJC considers likely to promote or improve the economic well-being of its area. And of course, each of the 10 councils in the South East Wales CJC are both members of the CJC and members of the joint working agreement that we have. The 2 bodies have operated alongside each other since 2021. The Corporate Joint Committee is a corporate body with similar powers and duties to a local authority, and it's able to directly employ staff, hold assets and manage funding. So unlike the contractual arrangement that the 10 councils have under the joint working agreement, there's no requirement for the CJC to act via an accountable body. It can act directly. So since its establishment, the South East Wales CJC has sat independently but alongside this regional cabinet. And with the exception of the Brecon Beacons National Park Authority membership of the two bodies is comprised of the same 10 council leaders. The Corporate Joint Committee has, of course, broader functions and responsibilities, but the economic well-being function is very closely allied with the purposes of the City Deal funding agreement and the wider investment fund. And in practical terms, the two bodies generally meet on the same day, one after another, and often receive mirror reports. Indeed, you'll be hearing this report twice this morning. That separation of functions, together with the need to act via an accountable body, has been legally necessary until to date, but clearly it creates some inefficiencies, and it doesn't sit well with that ambition of working collaboratively. Put simply, the 2017 joint working agreement between the 10 councils was in many respects ahead of its time in terms of regional collaborative working. But everything it does now can be done more efficiently, more economically, and more collaboratively via the CJC, which also puts us on a surer statutory footing and gives us all the greater safeguards and rigour that one would expect of a public body. So to that end, both this regional cabinet and the Corporate Joint Committee have for some time now been working towards a planned transition of functions and responsibilities to move, or to lift and shift, if we've been calling it, the responsibilities of this regional cabinet into the CJC so that it becomes a single body. And that body will be responsible both for delivering City Deal and the other sources of devolved regional funding that Cardiff Capital Region receives, as well as the wider statutory functions of the statutory Corporate Joint Committee. That transition planning has been going on for some time now. The original plan was approved by Cabinet in September 2021. The transition model is, as I say, one of lift and shift, with the intention that all City Deal funding currently received by the region, including the council contributions under the wider investment fund, be lifted and shifted, transferred into the Corporate Joint Committee to manage as of 1st of April next year, so at the end of the tax year. And the intention is that at that point, this regional cabinet effectively be stood down. There have been some delays to the transition plan. They principally related to the Corporate Joint Committee's tax status, and that needed to be resolved by secondary legislation. However, all of those barriers and obstacles have now been removed, and accordingly, members are invited to now make a series of decisions that bring that transfer into effect. Firstly, members are invited to consent to the transfer of the City Deal funding letter and any other funding agreements currently held by the accountable body on behalf of the region. Of course, that's only the money coming in. There are separate agreements in place in relation to how that money is held. And of course, there's the portfolio of projects that are funded by the region using that money. So the second recommendation is for members to consent to the transfer of that portfolio of funded projects. And assuming that those high-level recommendations are agreed, there are some recommendations for officer delegations. Firstly, delegations, a specific delegation to the Cardiff Capital Region Director to agree and execute the final form of those agreements. Secondly, a direction to officers of Cardiff Council to take whatever steps the accountable body needs to take to implement those decisions. And then, in addition to all of the contractual and other legal work that needs to be done to effect those transfers, members will also need to agree the final form of the Corporate Joint Committee's constitution and other governance arrangements. So that will include the terms of reference of its subcommittees, partnerships and advisory boards. It will also include the matters which may be appropriately delegated to officers. The Corporate Joint Committee's rules of procedure need to be finalised, including, importantly, if the CJC is to hold money, its contractual procedure rules, its financial procedure rules, its treasury management strategy, and of course the insurance and investment frameworks. And there are a number of other policies and procedures that any public body needs to have in place to be compliant with its public sector responsibilities. You're not asked to make all of those decisions at this meeting. They are meaty. So it's proposed that members form a member officer working group with a view to bringing those necessary decisions to the next meeting of the Corporate Joint Committee, which is scheduled to be on the 29th of January next year. And the second part of the transition report makes proposals for the Corporate Joint Committee's future governance structure. And to allow that work to take place, it's proposed to suspend the current meeting calendar of both Regional Cabinet and its advisory boards, suspend it until that final structure is agreed and comes online. And the proposal is for that work to start in our member officer working groups. And provision is made in the second part of the report for Regional Cabinet and its key panels to reconvene on short notice if decisions are needed during the transition period. So in relation to the governance structure and the transitional arrangements, members are asked to note those provisions, agree to form a transitional working group, and finally to grant a general delegation to be exercised by the CCR director in consultation with both myself as monitoring officer and section 1.5 officer to take any decisions that she needs for operational effectiveness during that period, subject to certain safeguards, and the safeguards are written into the wording of the delegation. I don't propose to go into any more detail about the report at this stage. It is a very full report that's available for members and for members of the public to read, but I'm extremely happy to answer any questions that members may have.
Great, thank you, Jane. I think that was really clearly explained and takes us through all the steps in a very logical way. Obviously, you know, if leaders are anything like me, they're focused on outcomes, and but it's right to get the governance and the steps like this right at the outset. So that's very important. So thank you for taking us through that so methodically. Okay, I'll invite members in for questions. I've got a couple of things I want to say and ask as well. I've got Geraint first, then Sean, then Steve.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Jane, for the clear and precise way really you went through that report. Like you said, it is a meaty document. There's a lot to take in there. And, you know, it looks like it'll be coming back to us, like you said, the 29th of January. The report that we're going to take to councils, will that come to us before that meeting? So they can, you know, it is a public document now, as you say, but it would be useful so it could go on perhaps our council's agenda for January before that meeting.
Yes, councillors. So obviously the decision to take reports to the individual councils are a matter for the individual councils, that neither Regional Cabinet nor the CJC can dictate when they take them, but we will certainly prepare effectively a pro forma report for you to take to each of them. And certainly my suggestion would be the good time to do that would be in January, just prior to that meeting on the 29th.
Thanks, Jane.
Sean.
Yes, thanks, Anthony. Yeah, thank you, Jane, and thanks to Kelly. This has been a long process and a lot more complex than I could have ever imagined. Just one question, really, on the under the recommendations at 6, it talks about putting together a working group to consider any necessary amendments to what is an interim constitution governance and partnership arrangement. And then paragraph 7 or recommendation 7 is to delegate authority. It's a sort of in the meanwhile.
Yes.
So what I would ask is, in the meanwhile, while that working group is considering the necessary amendments, are you on good, firm legal ground to be making those decisions, or are you putting yourselves in any way at any risk? Because obviously there's quite a complex amount of movement of shifting stuff from Cardiff City Council into the CJC, and I suppose there's governance arrangements on top of each and every project there, and I'm just are we sure that we're on good firm legal footing?
You're right, Councillor. It's an important matter for us. It is quite complex, the set of decisions and arrangements that we need to make, and there are some things that must continue to be decisions made via the accountable body, because it remains within the purview of the accountable body. But there are also a set of arrangements that are effectively giving and receiving. So, for example, the CJC will need to take preparatory decisions to be ready to receive money on the 1st of April. So that might involve setting up bank accounts, having signatories to bank accounts. We have a lot of operational agreements. So anything from the photocopier to rent of the premises to service level agreements that we have with our constituent councils to deliver certain parts of our services. All of those arrangements, steps need to be taken to stand them down, and it's the proposal that the high level ones all effectively be stood down at midnight on the 31st of March. But there are a lot of decisions that need to be taken to prepare for that. Now, the proposal is that members and officers work as a working group, meet as a working group between this meeting and the next meeting, and those have already, I think, gone into your diaries for weekly on a Monday morning between now and January. So certain decisions, there will be opportunities for us to report back to members to say, we need to do this has been done, so that you know what's happening. Other decisions are very operational in substance. They really are things quite as simple as sorting out who's got the lease and the photocopier. So yes, a lot of care needs to be taken to make sure that we are acting within our powers, and which side of the line they fall on, whether they're merely accountable body decisions or whether they're CJC decisions. But you're absolutely right, Councillor, and we all need to keep a close eye that we are acting within the law.
And Councillor Morgan, if I can just add to that, I mean, it does sound a lot, doesn't it? This working group is going to plough through a lot of detail and data, and I'm also conscious that us setting this up is coming at a time when you've got a lot of work on in your own local authorities, indeed leading up to a budget setting process. So even if you can't make the working group, what Jane and I will do, we'll issue weekly updates just on a side of A4, and we'll make sure that the things that working group looks at and makes some key decisions around are fed into the next briefings. So they're not staccato points, they culminate in a briefing session, which, as you know, we run for the CJC board and regional cabinet every month. So you would have that opportunity as well to feed anything in should you miss one of those working group sessions. So both options will be available to you, just to make sure everybody is kept up to speed and has a grasp of some of the detail that we're going to be processing now over the next few weeks.
Okay, thanks, Kelly. Thanks, Jane. And you're absolutely right. I think January is going to be a 70 hours a week month.
Yeah, sorry.
Thanks, Sean. Steve.
Yeah, I'm glad Kelly said that. I got a by-election to run now as well, on top of everything else, for February the 8th. The question, though, was on page 56, and it's on paragraph 51, and an overspend described in there, 210k. I just wondered, what exactly is that overspend for?
I'll have to apologise for this, Councillor, because this is a detail that's in the financial implications, and I am not the financial officer, but I'm wondering whether Chris is online and able to assist us with any detail. Are you able
I
to
can
assist
cover
me?
that. Yeah. So it was captured in the earlier report, Steve. So overall, as we reported earlier on, we are underspent. We have a surplus in the budget. But in relation to the CJC transition itself, so three components to our budget, if you like. There's the day-to-day city deal operations, there's the CJC transition budget, then there's the CJC budget. And on the transition bit, because it is so involved, it is so intricate, there's so much to it, we've had to put more resource into it, in particular around some of those legal issues and procedures. So that is overspent, but that is offset by underspends elsewhere, which still give us an overall underspend situation. So everything is set out, and we can cover it again when we go through the performance report later on, if that's helpful.
Well, that's great. Thanks, Kelly. Thanks, Chair.
Chris, did you want to come in there as well?
Yeah, just to reiterate what Kelly's just referenced, and just for members' information, if you did refer back to the month 6 report and that table I referred to, which was table 1, I think on page 17 of the report, you'll see that those figures are included within the table, and we still have that projected underspend as Kelly referenced. So you'll see the line in there, the CJC transition expenditure, that overspend, but that is being incorporated still within the overall position, and still we have that underspend overall. But happy to take or provide any further details after the meeting if needed.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you.
Thanks both. Sorry, Jane, do you want to?
Sorry, if I can just come back to what Councillor Thomas was saying about just the amount of work that we have to do between now and January, and indeed between now and April. In terms of the member officer working group that we've proposed, just to make clear that is an informal group. It's not a decision-making body. The decisions are made at our public meetings in January, and then the next meeting after that is scheduled to be in March. So that working group is important, and a lot of work is intended to be done in that group, but it is an informal group. So we will circulate papers about the sorts of decisions that members are being asked to make, and members may equally contribute to that group via email or other written means if they're not able to physically attend that meeting. So the work of it is important, but please don't be completely overfaced by it.
Thanks, Jane. I very much welcome this report and the innovation that it sort of signifies, and the end of the twin track approach that's been necessary during transition. I say that because, as a fan of partnership, I always sort of view more partnership, less bureaucracy and fewer meetings as a good sort of maxim there for taking things forward, and I hope that will achieve that and avoid the duplication that we've had to go through in the past few months necessarily. But I think that's important because we've got an already busy partnership landscape as local authorities across South East Wales with the different partnerships that we put together. I think the relationships that we built in this are key. I hope they'll move on to the new CJC so that we can build on those. I think we've moved so far forward since the early days that were mentioned of the capital region. Thanks to the work of sort of Andrew Morgan and the leaders have been around since the start. Then I think that the relationship that we have now is night and day to what we were grappling with at the start. I think our focus now is rightly on impact, but I think it's got to be noted that partnership as a real sort of issue of strength, and that's been recognised by both Welsh and UK governments recently, as we've seen with some recent announcements. So I think that's good that that's recognised. I think that partnership approach isn't just amongst us as leaders, it's also the RAGP who deserve massive thanks for the work that they've done, especially Frank Holmes for chairing it, and the work that we've done to sort of get that relationship with businesses going, because I think that's been a key strength as well. I welcome the report to all 10 councils. I think that's a good chance to engage with our councils and improve understanding of what we do as leaders. I think that depth of understanding and partnership sort of right down our organisations is important to build on the understanding we have at our level. I also welcome the working group that's been set up to help that transition ahead of the January 29th meeting. I can imagine that's going to be a busy 29 days at the start of January. So welcome the input that we can have in that working group to help that transition go as smoothly as possible. Any more questions before we move to the recommendations? They're at paragraph 72. Is it possible to have a mover and a seconder for those recommendations?
Happy to move, Chair.
Thanks, Sean.
Second, Chair.
Thanks, Steve. So that's been moved and seconded. I won't read out the full recommendations because there's a page and a half of them and you get bored of my voice. But if we're all happy at paragraph 72, if I can take a vote. If I go first of all to Bunagwent.
Agree.
Merthyr.
Agreed, Chair.
Thanks, Monmouthshire.
Agree.
Thanks, Paul. Newport.
Thank you, Chair. Agree.
Thanks, Jane. Caerphilly.
Agree.
Thanks, Sean. Cardiff.
Agree.
Thanks, you. RCT.
Yeah, agree.
Thanks. Vale Glamorgan.
Agreed, Chair.
Thanks, Liz. Pregend.
Agree, thanks.
Thanks, you. And Torvine. Agree. So that's carried unanimously with 10 votes. Thank you to colleagues. Just for people watching, we go through that because we've got sort of qualified majorities just to make sure that all councils are happy with the report. And you'll notice my mind works either east to west or west to east. It's not in order of preference of councils or anything. It's just so that I don't inadvertently miss anyone out and have to apologise later. So that report is carried. Thank you, officers, for your work on that. I know it's been a lot of work to get that transition done and will continue to be a lot of work. But I look forward to a new dawn at the start of next year when we don't have to sort of have two balls to keep in the air at once, as well as the other plates we've all got spinning. Sorry, I'm mixing my metaphors now. It's dreadful. Okay, if we move on then to item 7, which is the 23-24 annual business plan Q2 performance report. And if I bring in Kelly first.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So this is the Q2 annual business plan report for 23-24, which we subsequently report into both UK and Welsh governments, thereby discharging the requirements of the assurance framework for Cardiff Capital Region City Deal. So it's set in the context of the 5-year strategic business plan, which you approved some 4 years ago now. And the key objectives there are around building back better and fairer, becoming a city region, scaling up delivery of the City Deal Wider Investment Fund, levelling up the region and supporting innovation-led growth through the creation and fostering of our core industrial sectors and clusters. So the key objectives for this year are set very much in that context and against the regional economic and industrial plan themes of being competitive, connected and resilient. So you'll see that some of the objectives that were set out for realisation in this year are at paragraph 6. So the business plans to take forward our clusters and our key industrial segments, operation of the Innovation Investment Capital Fund, making progress with the Regional Data Ambition project, which things are starting to really move on now and ramp up some considerable pace, ensuring that we make a good enough start around the strategic development plan and the regional transport plan requirements, bringing forward that business case on Metro Central, and members will recall the briefing that you had just a few weeks ago on the progress that we're making with lead delivery agents Transport for Wales on that. The remediation of Aberthaw, that huge site there that we're trying to repurpose as a green energy park. Of course, the unlocking the potential is subject to us getting that demolition movement in train. And then ensuring that we come good in relation to our shared prosperity fund rather, in terms of the objectives that we've got there for regional delivery of that, and then delivery as well of the target operating model for the new corporate joint committee. So you'll see, members, that in paragraphs 8 and 9, some of the key highlights are set out there. I'll cover the bit about spend first, because that's important, because you'll recall that we were behind at Q1, some issues with infrastructure projects impeding our ability there to deploy funds. We've made that up in Q2. We've spent just over 12 million, which is just shy of our target of 13 million. But you'll see there that we've noted the specific issues that we're having around infrastructure projects at the moment. The wider environment, I think, in terms of interest rates, still high inflation, some of the issues we've got around supply chains and the cost of goods and materials, particularly impacting some of the local authority-led Metro Plus schemes, progress with the Housing Viability Gap Fund, and of course you had that briefing on Metro Central and understand some of the issues that are playing out there. The flip side of that is the investments on which that Evergreen Fund concept is very much predicated. They're doing well. 2 more investments through the Strategic Premises Fund with Seren Studios, which is destined to have a very wide regional impact. And of course, the T Newport development, so they're going well. The first investment through the Innovation Investment Capital as well, with Amplify, and others now in the near pipeline, which are set to have a considerable benefit. Of course, the infrastructure issues are of concern. You know, we have them as high risk ratings. We're on top of these things. We're doing all that we can to mitigate and push them forward. But again, we've got to very much think about some of these lessons in relation now to deployment of the Northern Valleys Initiative and the rollout of full fibre connectivity right across the region. So just wanted to say, if you look at some of the impacts that we are assessed against, especially going into the Gateway review period that Colin mentioned, really pleasing to see that in the first half of this financial year, nearly 1,200 jobs created, indirect, direct, induced jobs there, which is really good for the region. You can see that number now starting to grow and maintain. 52 million in terms of private sector leverage as well, which is extremely positive. And you can see that we're working with about 188 different businesses to have that impact right across all parts of Cardiff Capital Region. I won't say any more, Chair, but you can see our wider activities, all of the other things that we're involved in, our thought leadership, the events, all of the work that we do to try and opinion form are all set out under paragraph 11. That wider investment fund update and some more detailed finances included at paragraph 12. The annual governance statement update is in there as well, and you can see that we're in train with all of those actions. All of the internal audit recommendations are now complete. And then finally, at paragraph 22, you can see an updated version of our strategic risk log, which again evidences and sets out what we're doing to mitigate some of those risks, principally around infrastructure, which I've already talked about today. So, Chair, on that note, very happy to commend the recommendations to you and also to take any questions.
Thank you, Kelly. I think that's a really strong first half of the year progress report there, with the impact that you talk about with in terms of jobs, the 52 million pound of leverage and the 188 businesses right across the region. So I think that's a really good news story for the first 6 months of the year. Any questions, colleagues? Right, are we okay to move to the recommendations then at paragraph 34 of this report? Can I have a mover and a seconder for those recommendations, please?
Move them, Chair.
Thanks, Steve. And a seconder.
Happy to second, Chair.
Thanks, Sean. Sorry, it's the classic teams, not everyone wanted to speak at once. So the recommendations, as I say, are at paragraph 34. Let's scroll down on my screen for those. It's recommended that the CCR Joint Cabinet considers and, if deemed acceptable, approves the Q2 performance report and authorises CCR Region City Deal Regional Programme Director to formally submit the report, including supporting information to both UK and Welsh governments and other stakeholders required on behalf of the Regional Cabinet, that we approve the proposed changes to the WIF approved capital and revenue budgets as set out in paragraphs 13 and 14 and summarised in table 1, and that we note updates against the OGS action plan and the internal audit action plan as set out in the report and in appendix 4 and 5 respectively. In addition, that we note the progress of CJC activity set out in the report and separately comprehensively reported to the CJC board. So if I take a vote on those recommendations, if I go to, I'll go Bridgend first this time. I'll go from the west.
Happy to support, Chair. Thanks.
Thanks, Hugh. Vela Glamorgan.
Happy to agree, Chair.
Thanks, Liz. RCT.
Yes, happy to support.
Thanks, Andrew. Cardiff.
Agree.
Thanks, Hugh. Caerphilly.
Happy to agree.
Sean Newport.
Thank you, Chair. Happy to agree.
Thanks, Jane. Mummershire.
Agree.
Thank you, Merthyr.
Agree, Chair.
All right, and Bryna Gwent.
Agree.
And Torvine is agreed. That's carried with 10 votes. If I can move to the next agenda item then, which is the exclusion of press and public. Are we all happy to agree that because the following reports are confidential?
Happy to move.
Second that, Chair.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Hugh. And is that all agreed, everyone? Yeah.
Agreed.
Thank you. Right. Okay. You can confirm when the recording stopped.